And so one of the things that I'm just going to mention to you all is that I was supposed to mention first, or a long time ago, is that I do record the lectures. So anything you say can and will be used against you. No, I'm just kidding. So anything that you write on the board, anything, or anything that you say will be recorded. And if you're not into that kind of, exposure to Big Brother and, the 17G spying on you and all that kind of stuff, oh, you're electronic engineers. You accept this without hesitation, I'm sure. In fact, you're probably going to be some of the folks behind all that. Yeah. Anyways, uh, oh yeah, no, it's Big Brother family. And then of course there's Santa Claus because he's watching over us all the time. I guess I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's Jarek's sense of humor. Okay. Yeah, that's too much information, Adrian, just so you know. Okay. All right. So today what we're going to be looking at is paragraph structure. I assume that you folks have done all the note taking for the Ohm's Law videos, so you can have something to do with these paragraphs. And I'm going to talk for a while, and then you guys are going to go off and sorry, to be gender neutral, you folks are going to go off and write some paragraphs. We'll also go over the first assignment so you know exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, it's available and all that kind of stuff, but I do like to go over assignments so that you folks know what my expectations are and stuff like that. Um, I think I actually come to think of it, I think my assignment sheet on this one is a little too long. So, make sure that you think of it in terms of what are the high level ideas that I'm looking for, right? Uh, you know, um, and yeah, okay. Now, one of the things I didn't do with you folks is abstraction and detail. Or did I do that last week? Did I do abstraction and detail with you folks last week? I think I did. I didn't do the other one that I'm doing with okay. Just talking to myself. Don't worry, don't worry. Okay. Let's talk about paragraphs. Let's see. Da, 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 da. I'm waiting for it to load the slide. I've never seen that before. I wonder what the problem is. Let's try that again. Hmm. Oh, seems to be doing something. I think this is a moment when I should get out my guitar and do a little, musical interlude. Because it doesn't. I don't know the song Freebird. And it's not loading for some reason. Okay. What's the problem here? Wonderwall. I don't know what that is. What is that? I'm going to get rid of this and reload it into the Oasis song. Wow, you folks listen to Oasis. Like, I mean, isn't that ancient history for you? Let's see. At least I thought they were a band from the 70s, maybe the 80s at best. Am I incorrect on that, or are they more 90s? Retro music by these days standards, no doubt. 90s. Okay. Uh, that will take a little bit of doing to do Dave Brubeck, but nice one. Nice. Yeah, Take Five's a real classic, isn't it? You're distracting me from my job. Stop it. Let's see. I need not assignments. I decided to reload the PowerPoint altogether because it was not loading into to show you folks. I might have to share a screen or something crazy like that. Let's see if we can get this to work. Just a sec. Okay, let's try that. Oh, that was quick. All right. Okay, so the way that I want you to remember paragraph structure. Now, I know that all of you have taken some sort of class at some point in your lives, and you've been told about paragraphs, one idea, all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that there is actually a lot of discussion about all aspects of writing. And in composition theory, the paragraph as a unit of information, a unit of thought, is really actually pretty significant. And that's why I like to make sure that you're doing paragraphs in a way that are going to meet the needs of your readers that are, post-secondary academic readers or professional readers and beyond, right? If you decide to bridge, and do third and fourth year, and or even beyond that, the point first paragraph structure holds true all the way through to almost, it's what's there's a phrase in composition theory called writing across the curriculum. And so this kind of structure actually applies regardless of which discipline you're in. And so it's one of the first things that I do in a class. So one of the things I just want to say is that, I always want you to remember paragraph structure, call it by this whole phrase, point first paragraph structure. If you can remember that, then you always know what the main thing that it has to be with any structure, and that is to make sure that you always put your point first. There may be some sort of a rhetorical reason why you want to put your point last, and there are someone telling a joke, for instance. Not that that's a paragraph, but generally speaking, we don't tell the punchline at the beginning of the joke, right? Because it would just totally ruin the joke. So, there's other instances, right, where we might want to put our point last. Sometimes we want to present our evidence first if we believe that our reader is going to be really, really adverse to your central claim. And so sometimes we like to preface that claim with some evidence to sort of get people into the mood of what the main point might be. But those are rare instances. More often instance is that you use a point first structure, but not just for paragraphs, but for, I would say, almost all communication structures. And so we could look at point first paragraph structure. We could talk about making sure that you make your point about what's in a section of a longer discussion, a report, or something longer than that. Making sure that an entire document is point first, making sure that your reader knows exactly what you're talking about right away. Yes, Christian, go ahead.
So like a point first would be an example of something like, geese fly south in winter, and then you base the rest of your paragraph or your document based on that, or am I getting that wrong?
You are absolutely correct. You are getting that totally correct. Right. So, geese fly south for the winter would be the claim, and then there'd be all kinds of other evidence or explanation of why that is so, right? So yeah, that's exactly it. Now, I usually like to just call it always point first, and but there's also other phrases like the topic sentence, right? You start your paragraph with a topic sentence, right? It outlines the topic that you're going to be talking about for that paragraph. And but I just find point first, and also there's a little bit of alliteration there, the P and the P. I don't know. Anyways, okay, let's move on with the discussion or the monologue on my part. And so I got this from a colleague. Actually, I got it from my wife, who used to be my colleague, and now she's kind of more my boss because she's in the dean's office. Um, but what I really liked about this is that it shows an idea about what happens for the reader from the reader's point of view, right? So the writer makes a point, and the reader says, "Really, is that so? And if that's so, how is it so?" The writer explains a little bit, and the reader says, "Wow, yes, I see that so. That's really interesting. Tell me more so I fully understand." And then so the writer provides examples or cites a source, which can act as evidence and also, development of the idea, or, furthers the idea in some kind of way to add more information about the idea. And a point can be a claim, or it could just be a way of like organizing the information. When we talked about, I'm pretty sure we talked about obstruction in detail last week. Did we not? Do you folks remember? Because I don't. I talk about abstraction in detail every single semester. So I'm just looking at your outline here to make sure that I did talk about abstraction in detail. I did a little bit, yes. Okay. All right. Um, so the thing is that almost always you're going to start off that main point with some sort of abstract concept or generalization as a way of organizing all of the information that follows within that paragraph. And we can see this kind of in a sort of a more of a macro level of the section or the chapter or the beginning of a document. But we're not going to go there quite yet. So here's paragraph structure through each one of these 4 points. But this is what you need to have in a paragraph to be a complete unit of thought and a fully developed paragraph, right? So the first thing is you make a central point. This is made within the first or second sentence. Sometimes you can have the second sentence depending on whether it's transitioning from the previous ideas and you want a big sort of introductory kind of way of bringing in the second point. But generally speaking, work towards the first sentence. So you articulate the central point as a high-level abstraction. This abstraction organizes subsequent statements in the paragraph. Now, you might be talking about some aspect of electricity, which is in itself an abstraction. It's also a kind of a detail because we can get electrocuted by electricity. But it's like, you know, you're going to set the electrical induction level to 0.05, right? That might be your claim, and that's a very specific thing to, I'm just making shit up, but sorry, excuse my French. Um, just making stuff up. But the thing is that like you're making a claim about electricity, and you might include some details within that directs the reader towards what you're going to say about that issue about electricity. And we'll see all sorts of examples like that. And the reason why I couch it in these kind of terms of like saying, you got to have the abstraction, but you might have some details in there. It's just because with engineering, sometimes the point is in the details, and quite often, right, it's like the actual workings of parts that are the main idea, right? This microcontroller does XYZ, right? Could be it has Wi-Fi and it has Bluetooth capabilities, right? And then this microcontroller is good for this project because of these abilities, and then you might these functions, and then you might further that by explaining why you need those functions or something like that. So the point I'm trying to make is that while almost always there's some sort of a generalization or abstraction in that first sentence or two, you might also have some details in there that are part of that because you're engineers. You might not find that quite as much in, say, an arts course like a sociology or history or something like that, but you will find it, or English. You will find it often in engineering. The second thing you need to do is explain your main point. That is an example. That's one thing, can be an example. It may be an explanation of constituent parts. That is to say, if you're talking about a microcontroller, you might want to talk about the parts of the microcontroller, right? And what it does is that it helps explain why you are even talking about that particular microcontroller. Um, uh, and it also can be a connection to the overall central point, right? So you might use a term or a phrase or a concept or even a detail like a concrete object, such as a microcontroller or a diode or whatever, as a way of explaining your point and relating it to the document's overall content. You would use some sort of a key term that your document is talking about. So if you're talking about, say, the functionality of a particular kind of diode, then you would, if just by referring to that particular diode, you're end up referring back to the overall central point. Now, in terms of this part, the second part, I'm still going to continue talking about that. This is where you can develop your idea and really focus it as well. You can bring that focus to bear in this second or third or fourth sentence. And there's no set number of sentences for any of these things. Sometimes to make a central point, even or to develop or explain a point, it might take several sentences depending on the complexity of the idea. And I find usually the more complex idea, the more sentences you need to really establish that idea. So the third thing is to support your main point with details. Now, details, way that I've kind of articulated so far is that details are most often concrete objects, but details can be other things too. They can be concrete examples, right? So you're looking at the specific, wiring of a microcontroller or a diagram or block diagram, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it also can include quotations or paraphrases or summary from secondary research, right? So it might be a quote from a source or paraphrase or summary, and this, even though it may contain a lot of high-level information like abstract information, it still acts as support towards your point. So it's acting as evidence, and the quotations are not often used, not often, sorry, sometimes I trip over my own face. Um, uh, and I lose my train of thought too as I stumble. So, with that in mind, uh, so concrete examples, sources that you are drawing from, and it can be also specifics about the concept, right? Concrete, like minute little things. I mean, like talking about minute, like you folks get into some pretty minute stuff, and I can't imagine you're not going to go blind looking at those things. Um, I just pulled out a graphics card out of my computer. And it's like I'm just amazed that you folks will know how these things work. And to me, it's like I know electricity goes into it. That's about it. What GPU was it? I don't know. I actually kind of lied. I didn't pull it out. I just bought a new computer, and I was pulling out my old graphics card to give to my brother. Ah, you're designing a power supply next semester and then fabricating it. Oh, maybe you can make a power supply for my brother. He's kind of stuck on. Yeah. Anyways, that sounds cool. Uh, yeah. No, I got a really sweet new graphics card. It's pretty nice. Anyways, um, well, I got a whole new computer. My older one was 10 years old. It lasted 10 years, my other computer. Can you believe that? Over 10 years. So there you go. Anyways, enough about my personal junk. Um, actually, can I just show you one of my favorite toys? I'll show you my one of my favorite electronic toys. It's a Focusrite audio interface. I love this. I get to do recording with it on my computer, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, all right. Enough. Sorry. It's good to have these digressions, right? Yeah, I don't know anything about the Ryzens. I don't know I don't know. I know the NVIDIA numbering. Um, yeah, that's cool. Anyways, yeah, the Focusrite is cool too. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, and if you folks ever have suggestions of how I can um, reduce the latency for jamming online, I would really appreciate that. But whatever. Okay, let's get on to the fourth thing because we really do have to continue developing this point about point first paragraph structure. Um, okay, Kristen, you're on. Um, yeah, it's to do with using a Ryan. It's to do with using an online jamming software called JamKazam, and I find with the latency is anything more than 10 milliseconds, then the beat is so far beyond. It's really hard to get the groove on, especially if I'm listening on the headphones and I'm like literally like half a second after my own my own voice. That's kind of weird. Yeah, I'm hoping that a few things are going to help. Yeah. Anyways, so on the fourth point, develop the main point and the details to increase comprehension. So there are a number of ways you can develop the main point is to give more information about the point, right? That further develops the reader's understanding, right? And further extends the reader's understanding of the main point and provides them with information that they find useful in relation to that point. So then a couple of other ways, like, and that's a bit amorphous, like a bit abstract way of describing it. But one of the ways you can do development, and I actually encourage you to do this as much as possible, um, is to explicitly connect the point to the details, right? And or add related information. So when I say explicitly connect to the details, one of the things is that you or the evidence, right? So you might have some evidence that this microcontroller is the best microcontroller because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Say it's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and some other function that is good for your project. And then you can close that with saying, the Bluetooth will be useful because I want to have this functionality in my project, right? And then, now I know I'm kind of talking ahead because I know you folks don't have that kind of project quite yet, and but the just even that much development can make a reason for sorry can further extend the idea. But the other thing too is that one of the things that's really important is that when we provide evidence for a claim, right, or a point, it's really important that you tell the reader how this evidence supports the point. So the reason why I slowed down, I really wanted you to hear that, is because it's super important uh, that you are explicit, like that you're telling the reader explicitly in the paragraph, right? These ideas from so and so, if you're summarizing someone, or this idea works with the, you have to maybe not quite so overtly, but what you want to do is you want to explicitly tell the reader that the details or the evidence or whatever supports the idea, the main point in certain ways, right? And that way you're not leaving the evidence to speak for itself, because sometimes the evidence won't speak for itself, right? It may speak to you about that because you're the one writing that report or that paragraph. It makes sense to you because you're kind of supplying that extra little bit of stuff from your own head, right? So you have to make sure that it's really clear why evidence is supporting the main idea. And sometimes it's obvious, but often it's not. Christian, go ahead.
So this is more, relating to the plagiarism. So when it comes to understanding and maybe talking about some ideas that we've grabbed from some other places, like how extensively, and I'm still trying to, make sure I don't accidentally fall in these holes, but if you do understand a concept from another article and kind of
Right.
paraphrase it, like does the citing is the citing procedure still the same, even though it's in your own words from your understanding, but would you cite that it came from that article, my general understanding came from it, even if I'm not directly quoting it?
Yes. Yeah. So yes, you're correct. If you use information from a source, an article or whatever, you have to cite that source, whether or not you're directly quoting it or paraphrasing it or just using ideas from it, right? That are kind of their ideas, right? If they're talking about microcontrollers, everybody knows about microcontrollers in engineering, so that wouldn't be as much of an issue. But the we're going to get to citation practice later on in the course, but when you bring in any source that is not your own, you have to give citation for it. I think that's the blanket kind of way to say it. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Good questions there, Christian. So yeah, we'll deal with citation in the coming weeks. We'll do a little bit. I don't really do much with the lab report because you don't really need to do a whole lot with citation in the lab report. And the second one, maybe a little bit more. Or if you decide that you want to bring something in, then you can legally, so to speak. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to some. Let's look at. I'm going to talk about each one of these things. I'll try to speed up a little bit. Sorry to get sidetracked with electronics. They're all over the place, right? Another fun thing I got recently was my overdrive pedal. That's super fun. Anyways, so point first structure increases usability and persuasion. So point first quickly establishes a meaningful relationship between sentences in a paragraph. And so and this is one of the main functions of making sure that it's point first, so that the reader is completely aware of what information is going to fall, like what the information in that paragraph is doing. Because the thing is, like, we might make a point about something, but we often need more information than just that one point. And so the information that's in a paragraph is very essential, or it should be, otherwise we're wasting our reader's time. But that, if it's essential for our understanding, all of the information is important. And the point first, by establishing that relationship, allows the reader to mentally place it on their desktop and say, oh, all this information in this unit in this unit relates to this idea, right? And it makes it way easier to remember, right? So the point organizes the details for the reader, enabling the reader to remember what was said more easily. And that is, if there's any, I mean, I'll probably say this a lot through this course, but if you want to get across to the people that you want to get across to, right? It's really important that you present the information in a way that makes it as easy for the member as possible, right? Readers want it to be easy. There's no doubt about it, right? We are lazy readers. We want to, we want it. It's like, I don't want to have to think while I'm reading, you know. Um, or a better thing, I'll continue on and I'll pull on that a little bit more. So the reader will thus not have to interpret the meaning. The meaning will be clear. And so what this does is that the reader's effort after meaning is reduced. So before we go to the last point, which is kind of a separate point, the effort after meaning, I've given that in italics to emphasize this concept, right? Effort after meaning. And I just want to tell you a brief little thing. So many years ago, I taught a class to people going into forestry. And so one of the things that I did is we talked about, because some of them would end up working in national like parks and stuff like that. And so in forestry, there's not forestry, but in those parks, you'll come across signs, right? And these are called interpretive signs, right? They interpret what people are seeing in front of them so that they can understand what they're seeing, right? Could be anything, right? It could be a gorge, a tree, some natural phenomena, right, that you typically see in parks. They're called interpretive signage. Now, the most interesting thing I found out about signage when I was reading about that is that there's something called the 333 rule. And what this is that when someone approaches a sign, they will give it 3 seconds. They'll read it for 3 seconds and to decide, and research has been done on this, seriously, like people research the weirdest things. Uh, Someone will take 3 seconds to decide whether or not the information is of use to them or of interest to them, right? And if it passes that first test after 3 seconds, they will continue reading for another 3 minutes. And then they'll reassess again. Is this still interesting? And then if they decide that it's still interesting, they'll read for another 30 seconds. Um, Now, and so, yeah, maybe, I don't know. It could be true, Daniel, right? It's not the 1% of the people who actually see signs. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's like, so anytime you're the next time you're at a park, like, you're camping or something like that, and you see the signage, right? And they're talking about, the various flora and fauna and stuff. You can do this little test with yourself. But yeah, people have actually tested this. Now, the reason why people do that is called the effort after meaning, right? Is the effort that I am expending worth the information that I get back? So that's kind of interesting, right? This idea that we expend effort every time we read, right? Is this interesting? No, I'm going to go on to something else, right? You're looking through the newspaper, you read, like I read CBC almost every morning, and and I go through the list of headlines, and I decide in seconds whether or not I want to read the article relating to a headline, right? We do the same thing when we're surfing channels, if you still watch TV. So yeah, the effort after meaning. It's a really interesting concept, I think. Yeah, it does describe our current society in the sense of our, uh, uh, what's the, I had the phrase low attention span. Exactly. Yeah, it was in my head and then it disappeared. I'm 56. That's what happens. So Yeah. So, yeah, and whether or not we have a low attention span or not, who knows, right? It's like, it'd be interesting to see if medieval people had a longer attention span than we do. Okay, so effort after meeting. So I will refer to this phrase again, all right, and I'll, might even write it down, right? The thing is that I want you to be aware that, like, even though we're talking about it in terms of paragraphs and stuff like this, the effort after meeting is actually can have a lot of effect on whether or not people actually read what you've written. Right now, your instructors, they're paid, right? They have to read what you've written, right? They don't really have much of a choice, right? So they're expending the effort, and it's their job to, right? I'm kind of kidding around there, but it's like the idea that we expend effort is actually really significant on a basis of communication. Are we making our readers' effort too much, right? And if it becomes too much, they will stop reading. Simple as that, right? Except for those who are paid to read it, like us, the faculty. So I'll return to that again and again with other aspects within various applying to various things that we do in this class. So the final point: a point first document allows a reader to skim the main points, right? And this is a really significant aspect for busy readers, right? They want to skim the points so that they can read is actually of interest to them. Now, perhaps they've decided that your report that you've written on microcontrollers, is important to them in some kind of way, so they'll read the whole document. Um, or perhaps it's something that like you're a student, you're looking for more information about power supplies or microcontrollers or whatever, and you skim the document first to see whether or not it has information of value to you in your current research or whatever it is that you are finding interesting, right? And so these kinds of things are like these last 2 points actually are really important that go beyond not just point for structure, but also making it as easy as possible for different kinds of readers. This last point, right? We want to make it easy. We want to reduce the effort after meeting for readers. We also want to make it easy for different types of readers, right? There's some readers that read from beginning to end, and there's some readers that will skim through it and read only the parts of interest to them, and so forth, right? And one last thing I wanted to say about this first point, uh, when I became aware of this myself, it became so much easier to read because suddenly it's like, oh, you put the point at the beginning of every paragraph, so that means that's all I have to remember. Like it just made it so much easier for me to do research because I could literally have 10 articles on hand and I could skim through them and say, and then within, half an hour, I would reduce that 10 articles down to 5 that were actually of interest, that I would read the whole article, right? For research, this is when I, doing research either for classes or other related things. So, and that can be really significant, right? Because it really makes you, if you know this, then that makes you a more efficient reader yourself, and makes your studying easier because you know when you have to read a lot or when you can just skim it, right? And there's nothing wrong with skimming it as long as you don't skim the stuff that's really important, right? Okay. Okay, second, give an example that provides depth to the idea. So expand on the idea in a sentence or two or more, depending on the reader, the genre expectations, or we didn't really talk about genre, but there are reader expectations and also the complexity of the idea, right? Some ideas are obviously much more complex than others, and also the complexity of the idea can change depending on who your reader is, right? The audience and stuff like that. If your reader doesn't know anything about Ohm's law, then you're probably going to have to describe more than someone who does know or is an expert on Ohm's law, right? And we'll talk about the differences between writing for what the textbook calls high context and low context readers later on in the course. So, so you can expand through explanation, example, definition, or connection to overall discussion, right? Those are just some examples or sort of suggestions as a way of starting, getting understanding how to expand on an idea. Um, And I'm going to show some examples. We're going to see lots of examples coming up. And so, and this answers the reader's questions. Really? How so? Right? I had a discussion years ago with a friend of mine, and he said, I don't know what the big deal about paragraphs are. You just have to, you say your point and you're done. And at the time, I didn't know what I know now, and I didn't have an answer for that, but I thought, well, don't you have to develop the idea a little bit, you know? But you want to answer that question, right? Because this is every reader's question. They read your first sentence, and that question is, it's like, really, how so is there. But it's also, I think, one of the things that I always try to do is point it back on yourselves, right? On you as people reading, right? Become a conscious of your own processes. As you process information, think about your experience processing that information as you read through a paragraph, and try to become aware of the way that you are, adding up all these, stacking up all these ideas. And I will return to that when we get to the first draft review, because it's a big part of drafting. When someone else is reading your stuff, they're processing your writing, and and it's really important to be able to pay attention to how that processing is going. And if you can become more aware of how a reader processes information, if you can become more aware of how you process information, you'll become a better writer. It just kind of goes. All right, let's move on, because I'm taking a long time. I'm sorry for that. So details support and explain the point. It's pretty obvious, but this is the third thing. And so details are concrete examples, factual evidence, calculations, quotes, or paraphrase from sources. So details. So when we talked about abstraction and detail, again, like I talked about abstract concepts and concrete concepts, but details, when they act as like, so we can bring in information into a paragraph or any point, in a discussion, and when it's when we're using it as evidence, then, or let me rephrase this. When we are bringing evidence in, regardless of whether it's concrete or even abstract, in terms of more explanation, more, confirmation of why the point is the way it is. Um, and it can be very abstract, right? You could quote someone talking about Ohm's law, and and their discussion or something like that about your point, that helps support your point, might be very abstract. But when it's acting as evidence, it becomes a detail of the paragraph. So just so we really have an understanding of what our terms are, right? Like details has a broad variety of potentials within it. Okay. Details are required to support the main point. You can't support a main point without details. You can't support a main point without evidence or some sort of way of furthering understanding of the main point. And another thing is details, and I've already said this, but here I talk about it even more so. Details cannot stand by themselves. Details need to be explicitly connected to the point. So try to avoid the idea that the reason why this evidence supports the main point is obvious. Right? You really need to tell the reader how it supports the point explicitly. Now, you don't have to say something like this evidence supports the point in these ways. You can refer to the ideas, concepts, words in the evidence, and say how those concepts relate back to the main point. Right. Try to keep it focused on the content of the point and the paragraph, and make sure that those things are combined. You don't have to explicitly say this evidence supports the main point in these ways, right? That would just be kind of awkward and weird, and the effort is increased. So one of the things is that asking your reader to interpret the connections between a point and detail can lead to them interpreting your meaning not as you intended, which can lead to a loss of control over the meaning of your writing. And this is one of the reasons why I want you to make those connections really explicit, because if there's anything you don't want to do, you don't want to lose meaning of your writing. And you also don't want to pass the work of uh, uh, how your evidence and support are working together to don't pass that work of making those connections onto the reader because you're kind of forcing them to do a lot more work, right? You're supposed to be doing that work, not them. And if the work is too great, and if the effort turns into becoming too great, you'll lose your reader. And that last point, I don't know what spec fic means. I think it was supposed to be specific. So, eek! I have a mistake on my thing. I'm sure you're all have all written it down and then crossed it out, but then written be specific. So one of the things about details is that you really need to be specific, and they relate to specifics, concrete stuff. But try to be. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to connect this up right now, and I can't. Uh, I used to. I actually used to, like years ago, I would have be specific at the bottom of almost every slide because I want people to I want you to think about the reader and like the reader can't be guessing, right? And if you're, always kind of up here talking about things in really kind of abstract or general ways, then your reader's going to be like, how does this all connect up with this other stuff that they've talked about elsewhere? Anyways. That's my big comeback. Okay, so now here's a point first paragraph example. I'm going to show other point first paragraph examples, including this one, but this is the one I really take apart. Now, I've chosen this for a couple of different reasons. One, because it has a lot of numbers in it. Another is that I took it off the internet. It was virtually a blog post about how to deal with some sort of piece of equipment, the CEM3340. I have no idea what this thing is. When I show this to the electronic engineers at the end of their program, because the old course 132 used to be at the end of the program, they all knew what it was. Well, some of them did, some of them didn't. Anyway, so let's look. I'm just going to read this aloud, and then we'll go through each part of it, so that I can really demonstrate the four aspects of point first paragraph structure. All right. One of the quirks of the CEM3340 is the waveform outputs. For a start, these are all different levels. The ramp is 2/3 of the positive supply. The triangle is 1/3 of the positive supply. The post square is the positive supply level minus 1/3 volts. For a typical 15-volt supply, this gives levels of, I don't know, a bunch of stuff. You know how to read this, I don't, respectively. Another quirk is that the pulse is an open collector output, so it needs to pull a pull down resistor to set the lower level. Usually this would be just be grounded, but it can be taken to the negative supply. Most synths compensate for the differing levels in the following waveform mixer stage. This is easily, I think, done. Sorry, this is easily done by changing the input resistors in an inverting op-amp mixer. So this has got to do something to do with synthesizers. And we can see now this is not the most fantastic paragraph. That's one of the reasons why I chose it. It doesn't have very good transitions in it, but it is still point first, right? So here we have a claim. One of the quirks of the CM334 is waveform outputs. Right now, notice that we have a specific thing, the CEM3340, but the main point is the quirks of these waveforms. Now, sentence 2 establishes different aspects to these quirks and indicates the immediate aspect to be discussed. Right? And it is largely a transitional sentence. We'll look at transitions later on in the course. So they're all different levels, right? Yeah, this is how we start. It's all different levels, and we get all these different levels, right? We get the ramp, we get the triangle, and we get the pulse square, and and all these numbers that mean something will either do or will mean something to you. Now, an example is given to exemplify the above statement. So it gives more information about the voltage use. That I don't know why I have so many missing letters in these. That's weird. It wasn't like that this morning, I tell you, when I was looking over this. Okay. Sentence 7 provides another aspect of quirks. Uh, so the reader has been alerted there are more than one quirk, and here they give a second quirk. Now, we've already gotten some quirks with the waveform lengths, but another quirk is that the pulse is an open collector output, so it needs a pull-down resistor to set the lower level. Now we get a little bit of expansion. Usually this will be grounded, but it could be taken to the negative supply. And sentences 8 and 9 bring the reader back to the main point, different level quirks, and developing a small solution. Right? So, it refers to these different levels of the waveform mixer stage, and it was talking about the different levels already. So it's kind of returning back to the main idea about the different waveform levels, and it offers a little bit of a solution. Now, the purpose of this document, I can find it again and put it on if you want to be able to read the whole thing. But the purpose of this document is one of the things that. So whenever I start teaching a course, I try to find as much as I can through the internet and other sources of writing that's done within that discipline. And I discovered that there's quite a big community of kind of amateur, electronic engineers, right, or electronic people that use electronics. And these people might have engineering or technologist backgrounds or whatever, but people that just are fascinated. They just want to put a whole bunch of electronic stuff together. So and this discussion is from that kind of group, the sort of community of people offering, information and stuff like that of how to deal with certain things. And this, I assume, was for building of a synthesizer. Um, so usually in a face-to-face, I get people who start writing a paragraph right in class, and then I go around and I read it. Now, if you want, what we can do is that you could start writing. Now, we're not going to do this yet. I got another example, a couple more examples I just want to go through. It's up to you folks whether or not you just want to go off and do your paragraphs, and that's fine. Or if you want to write some paragraphs and then show me, we can do that too. I find the breakout rooms very difficult to work with, but I'm working on it. Not to say that I'm not to try and give excuses for anything. So here's one that is from a more of a trade magazine, and it is intended for professionals, right? People working within either electronics or they're either engineers or electricians and that kind of stuff. Mostly engineers. And I can't remember right off the bat whether this is a academic publication like a journal or just a trade magazine. And I'm pretty sure it's a trade magazine, but it's more, so it's a little bit higher level than say a popular magazine in terms of its focus and stuff like that. So looking at this paragraph, we can see the four elements. It's not as long as the other one. It only seems to have only three sentences in it, but maybe four. But here it is. LTE extends the performance of 3G to much higher data rates by using two different access schemes. Single carrier frequency division multiple access is used on the uplink, base station receive, mobile station transmit, and orthogonal frequency division multiple access is used on the downlink, base station transmit, mobile station receive. In addition, data output is increased by the use of multiple input, multiple output technology. So in this paragraph, which is fairly short, it is obviously part of a much larger thing, but it's mostly us talking about how these higher data rates is achieved through these access schemes, right? And so now I can't remember what LTE stands for. Maybe you folks do. Well, I don't know if it's a company name or a product name. Obviously, 3G is the the what it's something. Long-term evolution. Are you saying that I need some more evolution to be able to understand any of this, Dylan? No, just kidding. Oh, oh, okay, cool. What does it mean, Dylan? What is that? Oh, are you just making stuff up?
No, sorry, I looked it up online. It literally just says LTE stands for long-term evolution and is sometimes referred to as 4G LTE, standard for
Oh,
wireless data transmission.
well, there you go. Thanks. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. You learn something every day, Ryan. Boom. So yeah, that's great. So it's like, so the thing is that the point that's being made here is it's saying that the data rates, the performance is better, and it does it through these access schemes, and then explains what the access schemes are, right? Single carrier frequency, orthogonal frequency division, and then it has this in addition, right? Like it kind of extends it a little bit, and it's very kind of like, there's not a whole lot of, this is mostly kind of explanation, mostly kind of, it does name these types of access, right? And we might assume that the next paragraph would maybe talk more about these kinds of access schemes. It's quite possible the next paragraphs or series of paragraphs will talk about each one in turn as well. That's something I could look up. Anyways, so it's kind of interesting just to see how these you know people work on this kind of stuff. You folks will work on this kind of stuff. Okay, so now this paragraph I've taken from from a trade magazine, slightly it's newer, more recent than the previous one, um, and it is actually a paragraph from a short article that I'm going to give to you all. It's actually already on there about semiconductors. It's already that I'm going to give to you all to look at for transitions when we get to that in the course. And but for now, I just wanted you to look at it as a paragraph, and as the one paragraph. So it's talking about IMEC and IBM and semiconductors. Both IMEC and IBM have built highly efficient transistors with the 3,5 semiconductor indium gallium arsenide. Now, I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce it. Electrons can zip through this material 6 times as fast as they can through silicon. Thanks to the speed, it's possible to cut a transistor's operating voltage while maintaining the amount of current flowing through it, thereby trimming power consumption. So there's a few things here. We first, so as it's making a claim about these. These are details, right? These are actual companies. If you want, you can take your lunch and go into the IBM building and have your lunch in that building, right? Or with people working at the company. It talks about transistors. It talks about the 3,5 semiconductor indium gallium arsenide, right? Which is an actual is some actual stuff, whatever that is. But it's talking about that it's making the claim that they built these highly efficient transistors using this stuff. And then it explains it, right? It explains a little bit. It's talking about the electrons can zip through it, right? And the material 6 times as fast as they can through silicon. Now, I want you to, and then it says thanks to speed, it's possible kind of blah 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 blah. So we get more about like how efficient it is, right? And this whole article is talking kind of about efficiency, because it's cutting the operating voltage. It is more efficient, right? Trimming power consumption, right? So it actually ends. Power consumption is another abstraction, right? It ends with this kind of big idea, about it's more efficient because it's trimming power consumption. We could plunk it down into that one thing. Now, one of the things is that I want you to note. Well, you don't have to note. Don't make a note of it. Just how the language is how the ideas are articulated for a magazine, right? It's really easy for most people to understand electrons zipping through things. We can also understand, oh, it's 6 times faster in this material than silicon, right? But it doesn't have any numbers. And in a technical document, instead of saying zip, it might actually give some number representing that zip, right? So what's kind of interesting here is just how the language, we can see how the language portrays a certain kind of setting already, right? Sorry, we haven't talked about genre. We will talk about genre at some point. I think it's important. Anyway, so the thing is that like, don't worry about it. We'll get there. So this is kind of a side point, right? Some of the language that's used can actually tell us where we would find this kind of a document, right? And that, so okay, let's go to the last one, and this one, because this is the most fun one. So in a class situation, I always get students to write a paragraph together. And then they're able to use that paragraph later on as part of the sort of paragraph exercise. This was written by a bunch of mechanical engineers, and it is a perfect example of point first paragraph structure. A lightsaber is an efficient cutting tool. Using a high-powered laser beam, the lightsaber can cut through anything. Within the base of the lightsaber are hundreds of small mirrors that reflect the laser concentrated into one powerful beam. In Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon Jinn uses a lightsaber to quickly cut through a steel door. This scene proves that the lightsaber is a cutting tool extraordinaire. So, I mean, I think you can see now these are mechanical engineers. They weren't electronic engineers, so you can't don't get on too down on them. Yes, Krista.
The nerd in me is compelled to say that it's actually Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon? Okay.
Qui-
Well, I don't want to mispronounce people's names, but thank you for that, Christian. Someone, I was at a dinner party a couple of days ago and last week, and someone said, "Mike, I have some questions about Dungeons and Dragons," and I said, "Only if it has to do with second edition." And then someone sitting next to me on the other side was like, "Oh, the nerd component here is too much." Uh, okay, so yeah, I've heard that the subsequent editions are always better. I thought the third edition got panned. I thought that the third edition was like even more uh, crazy. Yeah. No. Anyways, I would love to play D&D again. That'd be fun. Anyways, so the I do have a tendency to digress, and if the digressions are like annoying, just say so. I will stop being annoying, and I'll just like I'll be focused. But anyways, they make a claim about the lightsaber, which is an actual thing. Sorry, it's not an actual thing. It's an imaginary thing, right? Yeah, I'm sure you do. Lots of people do. The lightsaber is a detail, right? It's a thing, supposedly, even though it's a thing of fiction. But their claim is that it's an efficient cutting tool, right? And notice the cutting tool is a generalization, right? There's lots of cutting tools, right? Knives, switchblades, I don't know, saws, that kind of stuff, right? Um, and then it gives explanation. It develops the idea, right? It starts to explain, the laser beam, and it can cut through anything. So it's kind of a repetition. But then it further explains with some details about the construction of the lightsaber, and then gets into even more details, citing a particular film. Qui-Gon Jinn, is that correct? Qui-Gon? Qui-Gon Jinn, is that correct, Christian? Would you please? Jackson is telling me no. Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon. Okay, gotcha. All right. You can see that I have not said I have not watched all these movies. I do remember that scene though. I've seen that one. Okay, so and then the last sentence comes back to the beginning, right? This scene proves, right? It talks about this scene being like that's the evidence, and it's referring back to the evidence and saying it proves it's a cutting tool, right? Now, whether it's extraordinary, it's a bit dramatic, but nevertheless. Okay, now let's see. Is there any questions before we look at the assignment sheet? I seem to be talking way too much because I don't know how we already got to 12 o'clock. It's like it's amazing how fast time can go when you're having fun. Because I know you're all having so much fun in my class, right? People that give me a thumbs up will get better grades. Oh, the introduction. Okay, so yeah, you folks have to write introductions. We will. Oh, question. Oh, introduction. What is why? Cosmin, you're freaking me out. You don't have to, you have to understand. Math actually makes me cry. I can't. Oh, Cosmin's gonna get extra grades because he gave me 2 thumbs up. Okay, I can see. That's what the thumbs up command is. Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Of course, you describe it as the thumbs up command, right? You guys are such geeks. Uh, It'd really be great to be actually meet all of you at some point at post-COVID to put faces to these names. And because one thing I find, so when I first started teaching engineers, like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, um, I kind of thought they were all kind of the same, baseball caps, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay, Adrian. A little on the older side, like me. Maybe not me as old as me, but nevertheless. So, but then over the years, your demographic seems to have changed. Lots and lots of geeks. And yeah, anyways, just teasing. Um, let's see, what was my point? Da, 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 da. Okay, so is there any questions about paragraph structure? Do you have any questions about what I'm asking you to do with the um, uh, Ohm's law assignment? So let's look at the assignment quickly, and then we'll be done, because I have taken way too long. Maybe it's the digressions. Maybe I should just stop doing that stuff, because even though I really do want to show off my Telecaster, which is my new joy. Okay, so Jonah, good question, right? Now, for citing sources, you folks need to use IEEE, which is the International Electronics Engineer Electronics Electricians Engineers something or other. I can't remember. Anyways, it's a fairly new citation practice. We will talk about citation. For now, let me just look at the site quickly. I'm pretty sure I just want to make sure I tell you where it is. Let's look at, okay, so thank you for looking it up, Jonah. Yeah, Institute of Electronic Engineers. Okay, so on the first section at the very top of the Moodle page, there is IEEE Quick Guide from OC Library. This will tell you all about citing in IEEE, and it is a weird citation, I'll give you that, but we'll go over it more explicitly getting closer to the lab report. Now, I'm not expecting you, the point of this assignment is to do paragraph structure. Note taking and paragraph structure. Those are the two things. And I think that next class we do concise writing as well. So there may be three things. And those are the things I'm more interested in. I actually don't need you to do any citation in this particular assignment. I know where you're getting all the information from. If you decide to bring in someone else, like some other information from another source, then feel free to try and cite it as best as you can. The IEEE Quick Guide is an excellent start. Okay. So that's the answer for you, Jonah, about citing sources. IEEE is used within electronic engineering, and and there's all sorts of different citation practices. But if you're doing anything within your engineering classes, then use IEEE. If you happen to be taking an English class or a history class, then you won't use IEEE, but they'll tell you what you need to do. Okay, I've got the assignment sheet up here. Now, the due date is not until the 22nd, so we had to do some time, but I guess that's next week, isn't it? That would be next week. Just looking. Yes, so the draft review is next Tuesday. And now the thing is that the draft review, we're gonna, let me just look at the course outline quickly. Not that one. Where'd it go? There it is. Let's see. Yeah, so the way that I've got this one set up is that I want you to try and do a draft review for this not during class time. We are going to try and do other draft reviews in class because I think it's going to be pretty important. But we'll talk about the draft review for next class, and basically, but you need to, well, I guess I'll talk about the assignment first, and then we'll talk about the draft review. That seems to make more sense. Okay, so obviously, so the 10% grade on this assignment is going to be both the notes and the summary, right? And so the notes and your use of point first paragraph structure are what gonna be really important. We're going to be doing concise writing next class. Um, how is that possible? Am I confused? What day is it today? Today's Wednesday. What did I just? Oh, sorry. Brain function. Okay. Yeah, we'll be doing. Yeah, we will be doing concise writing next class. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm not losing my mind. All right. Um, our next class is not on Thursday. Today's Wednesday. Today's Thursday. Yeah. So next class is Tuesday. You guys are freaking me out. Stop it. Okay. So the I'll just read it. I keep on prefacing myself. Okay. So with the length of it, I'm expecting to be about 3/4 to 1 page. But what I'm looking for is 3 paragraphs minimum plus a brief introduction. And so in terms of the introduction, just say that this is a summary of the Ohm's Law video by so-and-so found on YouTube. It talks about Ohm's Law and the Ohm's Law triangle, right? Just something really basic, right? We'll talk about introductions ad nauseum later on in the course, right? But that's not the thing that I want to be evaluating you for right now. I just want you to get in the habit of doing that, like reader know what's in the document. What's in the document? Tell me what's in the document, right? That's what introductions do. They tell people what's in the document. And so just doing the most basic and most concise way possible. I want to use memo format. Now, what does memo format look like? Well, kind of a lot like this assignment sheet. But basically, I don't usually, like with lab reports, I teach you format. With memo, I don't teach format because it gets kind of boring. Okay, class, please put your date at the top and then a 2 from underneath. And then I have to use this like Monty Python, terrible Monty Python voice, right? So if you want to know what memo format is, if you've never heard of memorandum format, Google it. Seriously, you will come up. It's wafer thin. Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna explode in a second. Um, Good one, Dylan. Yeah, the first time I did show my daughter a YouTube clip of the Knights at St. Knee being attacked by the killer bunnies, and she cried. She's like 5 or 6, and she started to cry, and I was like, no, no, it's supposed to be funny. And she's like, why is it funny? He just got his head chopped off. I said, because it's a bunny, you goof. And then she started to laugh, right? Yeah, traumatizing my children at a young age with Monty Python. So Google memo format. It's easy to find. If you Google it in 0.43 nanoseconds, you'll come up with like over 2 million people mounting their memo formats online, which suggests that they really have no life, right? Uh, okay. Uh, I thought isn't it the flight velocity of a southbound sparrow? Is it the African or the European? Wait, maybe. Gotcha there, Jonah. Okay, yeah. Um, I totally got you. Okay, and I had that memorized. Yeah. Oh, an unladen swallow. Oh, okay. All right. Stop. Okay. Okay. Now, let's see. So standard stuff, 12-point font, single spaced. It's very similar to the assignment sheet. Just Google it. Okay. I want you to have this ready by Tuesday, but but I want you to have it done by then so you can have time to revise it for submission on Thursday next week. Right. And we'll talk about draft review after I talk about this. So for this assignment, write 3 or more point first paragraphs describing the concepts and discussion of Ohm's law in the video on YouTube. Include a brief introduction, outline, summary, Evaluation is based on, first, on the use of point first paragraph structure, and second, on the accuracy of your notes. Okay, and there's going to be a bit on concise writing because we're going to be doing it next class. Okay, so I should have added that to it. You have a choice to organize the information according to concepts you believe to be most important. That means you may follow the chronology of the original, or you can rearrange the information according to another framework of your choosing. So, reordering concepts that you think makes more sense for a 3-paragraph summary. And the reason why I want you to think about this is that, so we gather information all the time from all kinds of sources, from teachers, textbooks, lectures, published books from the library, whatever, right? The internet. And all of those sources have organized the information that's best for their purpose in that moment, whether it's a book or an article or a lecture or, whatever. And it's perfectly reasonable, and sometimes even a better thing to do, to rearrange that information that meets the needs of your current purpose with the current document. And I will return to that idea later on, but, well, maybe I won't. But the point that I'm getting to here is that when you have a lot of information, you need to organize it that works best for you and your reader. And sometimes that means reorganizing the information than the way you got it. So you might have an article, right, and it talks about 10 significant ideas, and you want to use 3 or 4 of those ideas, and you might decide, you know what, I'm going to start with the 4th idea because it makes more sense in terms of my topic and my purpose, right? And then I'm going to go to the 2nd idea, then the 3rd idea, and then the 1st idea, or whatever, right? Whatever works for you. Now, it takes a little more work to do that, right? It's easy to follow the chronology of the original video, but just think about the concepts that he's discussing, and think of other ways, creative ways of organizing that information. I say here you will submit your notes to the summary, but you don't have to submit it with the summary. If you do, it actually makes it a little bit easier for me, but I have made a Dropbox for the notes. And if you put your notes in there, I will try between now and Monday. I have things I have to do, but I'll try take a look at those notes to give you a little sort of a heads up on whether that's good. Now, one of the things is that between now and Thursday, the due date. Now, I've asked you. Okay, let me finish. I'm digressing again. Okay. I don't know how I managed the whole class with my own voice. This is ridiculous. Maybe it's just because I feel weird teaching to my computer. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you use point first paragraph structure, and I give a little sort of outline of what that is. You may include information from outside of the Ohm's Law video, but ensure you don't omit information from the video in favor of other information. Because I know you're learning about Ohm's Law in Kevin's class right now. I know that he doesn't talk about the Ohm's Law triangle, right? And if you do, I'll try to, yeah, I know. If it had feelings, it's kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it has machines with feelings. A door opens for you, and it's like so satisfied that it got to do its job. Yeah, I'm really like geeking out here now. Yeah, good question. I don't remember that one, but I know it's a. I can't remember the author's name. He wrote a bunch of good. He was one of the great science fiction writers. Anyway, so I want you to use concise writing throughout. Right, we'll be talking about concise writing next class. Notes should be 1 to 2 pages, maybe handwritten. Philip K. Dick, yeah, thanks for that, Patrick. Single space, and so I'm actually expecting to be handwritten, and then just use your copier or whatever scanner of whatever device you have to scan them and send me like that, right? That will be fine, because even if I have a hard time reading, that's not a big deal. I'm not expecting you to retype your notes in any kind of way. I want you to focus on the paragraph structure more than ensuring that you have nice, neat notes. Use diagrams if that makes it easier to remember, but you can only have one diagram in the summary, and you can't depend on the diagram. It must be explained. That is to say, you can't say, please see diagram and expect me to look at the diagram and go, okay, I understand this evidence, and now go back to the reading, right? I want you to explain why that diagram is significant and so forth, right? So you need to incorporate it into your discussion. And we'll discuss the use of figures and tables later on in the course. But what I'm saying is that it's fine if you have a single diagram in your summary, but don't let it speak for itself, right? Okay. So now, in terms of the draft review, I'm hoping that you will latch on to another student in the class, and you will arrange a time that you will read each other's documents back to each other. So in other words, the reader reads reads the document to the writer, and I want you to do it out loud if possible. Now, I have not set up any kind of process that makes sure that you have done this. You know, if this was if I was permanently teaching online for the rest of my working life, I would probably have some sort of system that would do that. But yeah, exactly. So Jonah's making the call, right? Um, and I'm trying to read in between these lines to see what you're really saying. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So now, let's see. So, but here, if I'm going to give you any inspiration of impetus to do it, is your grade will be better if you have drafted and done this process. No, Alexa cannot be your partner because Alexa cannot read, as far as I know. And Alexa is just like going to read like a robot, you know, because Alexa is a robot, so that doesn't work. Um, so the thing is, like, you know, so you folks have to figure out. I put a note on the outline, right? Uh, I don't believe you have a parrot, Adrian. Oh, look at that. We're at 12:20. See you later. No, just kidding. So, okay. So, folks, all right. Okay. I love the humor, but it's like I want to laugh and engage and I can't. So, um, you know, the main impetus for getting this draft review done is that if you are drafting your assignments, anything you write will be better if it's drafted. If you had it in the first thing you write, it's not going to get as good a grade. So now there are systems in Moodle that are highly complicated as ways of getting people to look at each other's work and stuff like that. And I'd rather depend on you to be professional and to engage, right? So what I'm hoping is that you will do is that you will either meet up on through Zoom. You might be able to do it through Blackboard Collaborate because this classroom is open all the time. I don't know if that works. I don't think I have to be there for it to be open. I actually don't know. You could test that if you want. You could do it through Zoom. You could do it through FaceTime. Whatever works for you, right? You could do it over the phone. You know, as long as you have some way of sharing the files with each other. And then, you know, yeah. So is there anything with the assignment or what we talked about today? Because we're over time, and I usually give you enough time to actually write a paragraph, so I don't know why I've been talking so much. Any questions? Okay. Seeing no questions and trying to avoid more jokes. I know that I encouraged all of them, but nevertheless, I will see you all next Tuesday. And we'll talk about concise writing. I know that you can just barely, you can't even wait. And, you know, you kind of wish this class was going to go on for another hour and 20 minutes right now, because the idea of learning how to write concisely is so exciting. I know, but you know, sometimes we just have to wait for those exciting moments in life. Okay, if there's no more questions, if you have any questions, email me will gladly respond to you. Right. Yeah. Well, that helps if you can learn to. It looks like you're able to write, Cosmin. So, uh, but you just wrote those words, or was that Alexa, Ryan? You folks have a good weekend too. Once you get there. Uh, okay. Yeah. Alexa is spying on you, just so you know. It's true. You could be that, Adrian, but who knows? We could just be poorly programmed bots, all of us. Yeah. Okay. I'll see y'all later. You have a good weekend and have fun with that assignment.